everyone. Super excited. Welcome to the Datavault user group meeting. Let me see. There we go. I'm not going to tell you about the user group. This is the most amazing Snowflake user group. I might be partial, but I'm not lying. It's my favorite one. And if you haven't checked out other user groups, please do. There are some really, truly amazing ones. Some are meeting in person now, some are still remote. So please check out user groups at Snowflake. Just housekeeping, please stay muted unless you're speaking. And if you have any questions, we'll try to keep them just in the message for now while Alex is presenting, but afterwards, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. We love to chit chat. If you're comfortable, have your camera on. If you're not comfortable, that's okay too. We're not judging. Let's see. Couple of events worth noting. There is a Datavault conference in May in Vermont. I hope to see some of you there. And then there is a June Snowflake Summit. Hopefully I'll see some of you there as well. And I'll give you a sneak peek. Elsa and I are working on an amazing presenter for our next Datavault Snowflake user group in May. That's coming up. It'll be around Datavault modeling, which is, I don't know, one of the hardest things to do. And by the way, I'd like to introduce myself. Last time I didn't. So I'm Veronica. I consider myself the biggest fan of both Snowflake and Datavault. I've been working in data forever and ever and ever, and I kind of renewed my passion when I got my hands on Snowflake, but also learned about Datavault at the same time. So you probably hear me speak and constantly get people excited about Datavault. And my team is here today, so I also have very hidden agenda every time I kind of try to get speakers for this group, because everything that we learn here is very much applicable to what my team is working on right now. So shout out to my amazing data team at Saks Fifth Avenue. So quick agenda, I'm going to wrap up introductions. I want to make sure that Alex can talk about Datavault for however long it needs, and we have some questions answered in the end. And today's speaker is the amazing Alex Higgs, who is the lead developer for DBT Vault and also a consultant data engineer at Datavault. And we're going to talk about DBT and DBT Vault today. So I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Alex.
Thank you very much. A really nice introduction. Thank you, Ron. Okay, I will share. Thank you. Can everyone see that? We're good to go. Great. Yep. Cool. So, yeah, hello, everyone. Veronica has already introduced me, so I will skip that slide, but that's me, same picture. I work with Datavault. We happen to be named after the method, tactical decision on our part. And I am the lead developer of DBT Vault. But we have a whole team on it now. So yeah. So we're going to go through the what's and whys of DBT Vault. Going to go through a bit of DBT, which is the tool that DBT Vault is built for. So DBT Vault's a package, and then we're going to go through some of the main features. I'm going to show you how it works with a bit of a demo. And then kind of next steps and where you go from there. And then a sneak peek of a few of the things that we want to do for Snowflake in the future as well. So first of all, why DBT Vault? The whole idea is we're automating the hard stuff. So you don't really want to be sitting down manually writing and wrangling SQL together to get your hubs, links, and satellites working. And apart from anything else, Datavault is built for automation. You want to be focusing on the business and delivering value to the business. You don't really want to be messing around and spending time working on SQL when you can just generate it and someone's been there and done that and figured that out before. So that's the point of DBT Vault. And of course, it's free and open source. So it's a major benefit for anyone who wants to get started and try Datavault, DBT, and Snowflake out. And because of the free and open source community, it's a very big community. DBT itself is a very big community, and of course, all the Snowflake community is in there as well. So you get all the benefits of being in a community like that. So we found one of the main things that's really useful for DBT itself is parameters. So everything's kind of metadata driven. So with DBT Vault, all you have to do is provide your metadata, and out you get your raw vault essentially. And I'll go into more detail in that in a second. So let's have a look at what DBT is first. So DBT itself is it's called Data Build. The acronym is Data Build Tool, and it is also free and open source. It does quite a lot. It supports documentation generation. It has lineage diagrams. It's got testing. It does a lot, and it should fit into most of your data stacks. And the idea is, the reason they make it so powerful is essentially it allows you to template your SQL using a powerful templating language called Ginger, which is quite a popular templating language. It's very easy to use. And it essentially sits on your warehouse and deals with all the transformations and allows you to test and track and audit your transformations. So this is what a DBT model looks like without any of the templating. So this is just plain SQL. And a DBT model is essentially just a select statement. So you don't have to write any of the DDL. DBT goes in and wraps it with your create views and create table statements. You just write the selects. So let's step it up a bit. Now we can start using templating with Ginger. So the top statement there, we've got a variable, which is a list of things we want to insert into this SQL. And we've got these funny curly braces and the percentage symbols, which essentially allow you to say, okay, this block is my template, and this is what I'm going to be doing in this block. So you've got a standard for loop in there, and the bottom is our output. So you've just iterated through all the things in that payment methods list, and we've got out the generated and compiled SQL. And this is using a macro. So one of the really cool things you can do with DBT is you can start standardizing your SQL into macros, which essentially are just functions, which take a parameters input and output the generated SQL from those parameters. So at the top, we've got the macro. In the middle, we're calling the macro here, so cents to dollars. And at the bottom here, we've got the full output once DBT has gone through and replaced all the placeholders with the values that you've provided. And the reason I'm showing you this is because this is essentially how DBT Vault works. We provide you the macros. So instead of cents to dollars, you've got a hub. And instead of column name and precision, you've got your hash key, your natural key, your load date time, and your record source. And we do a load of cool magic in between and then output the hub or the link or any of the other raw vault structures that you want through this method. So I've already described a bit of what DBT Vault is, but like I said, metadata driven. We've got a documentation website, which we've essentially poured a lot of knowledge into, and all of the kind of quick, easy steps on how to get started with it and how to use DBT Vault. We've got an example project, which is what I'll be using in the demo today. And like I said as well, we support a lot of the Datavault structures. So there's a slide coming up where we go into more detail about what we actually support, but we've got support for all the basic structures and a few of the extra ones that you may not have seen elsewhere. And we're always releasing new features. So DBT Vault is the kind of perfect marriage of DBT, Snowflake, and Datavault 2, all kind of together and where they should be. I'll skip that one. So this is kind of a bigger diagram of kind of where DBT Vault comes in. So DBT deals with the load and transform as well. Because DBT Vault is built on DBT, we deal in the same area, but we go one level down and we deal with all the Datavault stuff. So raw staging, and we have a number of powerful staging macros that allow you to create your hashes, create your what we call derived columns, which are essentially your constants and your computed columns, and a bunch of other cool things in there as well. So it gets all of your data ready to be loaded in to your raw vault. So this is kind of the average workflow for a DBT Vault user. You have to do some of the upfront analysis of your source data, find out essentially what your metadata should be. So all those parameters that go into your DBT Vault macros, so hubs, links, and satellites and all that, you need to know what those columns are going to be, and you need to prepare your stage. But once you got those, you just provide the metadata to the macro, you run DBT, and out pops your raw vault structures. So it's essentially just going around the cycle, using the macros, outputting, running, and you can very quickly iterate and build up your raw vault. And it's fail fast. So if you find a problem with it, you've got the wrong column, that hub doesn't quite look right, it doesn't match the business properly, you just go and change the metadata, rerun, you've got a new hub. So this is everything we support currently, but we're always releasing new features, and eventually we'll run out of structures that are actually possible to create, but we're carrying on working on it. So I think we're working on status tracking satellites at the moment. I think that's one of the last ones we've got to implement, and then we'll be essentially just adding new features and improving the quality of life, maybe supporting additional Snowflake specific features. I'll get onto those at the end. So of course we support hubs, links, and satellites, transactional links as well. And then we get into the more complex ones and the lesser used ones, but nonetheless important and useful in depending on your circumstances. So you've got effectivity satellites, multi-active satellites, extended tracking satellites, which is built on Patrick Cuber's implementation, and pits and bridges. So the last 5 we're particularly proud of. So effectivity satellites to bridges, because they're quite a lot more complicated than the others. SQL is a bit tricky. You really don't want to be writing that. It took us quite a few months to get these right, and we've fully tested them. We're really happy with how they work and how much it's going to save people time. And I won't go too much into materializations, but materializations in DBT are essentially how your data gets created in the database. So for example, whether it's a view or a table, whether it's ephemeral, so makes use of CTEs. We've got a period and rank load materialization, which allows you to essentially iterate through your data as you're loading it. And you can iterate by a period of time. So I want to load a week at a time, it can do that. You want to load by an arbitrary rank using the rank window function, Snowflake, and other languages. You can write that rank and load in a particular order that you've defined yourself. And that's everything so far. Pits and bridges and extended tracking satellites were recent. And we've also updated to DBT version 1 because that was also recently released. So very excited about that. DBT version 1 has brought a lot of really cool new features, and it's made us very happy because it's always been in a good state, but version 1, yeah, it's going to it's filling everyone with confidence, basically. So what does it look like? Well, this is a hub. So as I explained earlier, you just provide the metadata. Now, obviously, it's just a function, really, at the end of the day, the bit at the bottom there. So it doesn't matter how you provide them. This particular approach isn't very scalable because once you start getting into the, maybe 20, 30 models, you're going to have to, these files are going to get bigger. So you want to be generating them, and there's other ways you can provide them via YAML. You can do all kinds of things. So this is just one way. And so we've got the source model at the top. So this is the so models in DBT are just as a reminder are your select statements. That's your essentially an individual table or a view, and we say, okay, we want the data for this hub to come from the view stage orders, and we've got a source PK or hash key called customer PK. We've got a natural key or business key called customer key, and we've got the load date timestamp and the source, which are the two standard columns for auditing in Datavault. And we just say these are the column names that we want to grab from view stage orders, and this is how we're going to create the hub. And the hub macro, you just pass those to the hub macro, and it goes away and creates it for you. So this is just an example of running DBT, and all the things on the left there are just it saying, yeah, we loaded that in. Our demo, our Snowflake DBT Vault demo, sorry, has at the moment 31 models total with 6 staging views. So we've got 3 raw stage, 3 staging, and then 25 Datavault raw vault structures there as well. This particular run that you can see is 100 million rows. It's the TPCH size 100 or 1,000 if I remember correctly. And it's only running on an extra small warehouse, and that took 186 seconds. So it's very performant. And we've also got a number of clients that we've used this in where we're getting into the billions, and it's still pretty performant, and we're very happy with it. So time for a demo. Would this be a good opportunity if anyone has any questions, just to answer a few?
There was one basically said multiple column business keys are supported. Yes, and Neil just confirmed they are.
Yes, yeah. So I'll quickly go over that. So essentially, you just provide a list instead of same for if you've got multi-source hubs and links. You just provide a list of staging tables that you or views that you want to load from instead. So it's very simple to flip between the two. No, not really any additional configuration needs.
So there is another one. Do you use Snowflake tasks and DBT to load data from object to object, or DBT model assumes you just use CT and views approach?
So the thing with DBT is that you can kind of do it however you need to do it. DBT Vault doesn't really care as long as it's getting the, the data is there and you're pointing to the right model. We've implemented, for example, tasks and streams and pipes in a number of clients, and it works really well.
So, all right, a couple more questions and then maybe go through them and then we'll continue. So can DBT Vault support cases where an org has a generic data ingestion pattern based on config files?
So DBT Vault itself doesn't necessarily have anything special in it to do that kind of thing, but because your DBT Vault is built in DBT, you can write your own macros and models and everything in there. And you can extend DBT Vault's own macros and models that it provides. So yeah, there's no reason you can't. You can have DBT Vault for all the raw Vault bit, and you can use DBT where necessary for all your specific things. Yeah.
All right, Alex, why don't we do the demo and then I'll keep an eye on questions.
No problem. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll just stop sharing and flip over. Although, actually, no, never mind. I can just do this. There you go. Okay, so don't worry, I'm not going to just shove a bunch of code at you guys, but I will explain this. So can everyone see that first of all?
Maybe just a little bit bigger. Maybe
I'm gonna
everybody else is shy, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna explain through. So I can't make this bit on the left bigger, but what I'll do is I'll zoom in on this first. So
perfect.
on the left here we have a standard DBT project. You've got your macros folder, you've got your models folder. There's a bunch of other things in there. The macros and models are kind of where most of you will spend your time. So if we go into the models folder, now the models folder can be kind of arbitrarily nested as much as you want. So you can have any folder structure you want in here. DBT will find your models, so you can organize it depending on your organization's need. For this demo, we've gone for just a standard logical approach of we have raw stage models in here in the raw stage folder, and we have the kind of primed, what we call the prime stage models in the stage folder, and then we have all of our raw vault models in the raw vault folder and hubs, links, and satellites in their appropriate folders. So on the right here, I'll zoom in a bit more, you can see a hub. So this is actually the exact example that I showed on the presentation just now. And we have all of our metadata at the top here. Now, this is another way of providing metadata, which I'll go into a second, but it's essentially just standard YAML, and that goes off to the stage macro. So this is one hub, and then we've got, let's open another hub, so hub line item. Again, it's pretty much exactly the same. We've just changed the metadata slightly because it's we've got a multi thing here for a multi-column natural key here, and then we've got hub nation, and this one is fed from 2 different stages. So like I said earlier, we can do that. But otherwise, they look all exactly the same because we're just using the template and passing different metadata. So let's go to links now. Link customer nation. Again, very similar. Instead of a natural key in the hubs, we're now providing an FK foreign key, and we're just saying, okay, these are the 2 columns that we want to be our foreign keys, and these are present in vStage orders. Same for hub customer order, sorry, link customer order. Got inventory, and when we go on and on. So with satellites, again, a little tiny bit more complicated, just because the nature of satellites, they are a bit more complicated. Just provide metadata again. Got a payload here, we can list them all. If you've got, you know, hundreds and hundreds of columns in your payload, there are a few convenience features. You can just say you can say exclude, so you can say something like all except these columns. There's different ways you can provide all this, and it's very flexible. So that's hubs, links, and satellites. T-links, pretty much exactly the same as a kind of standard satellite with a bit more information in there. So that's the raw vault. And I'll show you the staging because we're pretty proud of this. It really helps a lot, and it's a huge time saver. So for vStage inventory, which is the inventory stage, we've just said, okay, we want our data to come from raw inventory. Raw inventory is, for the purposes of demo, we've customized it a bit and done some filters in here and some joins. Essentially, we're bringing all the TPCH data together. Ref and source are essentially DBT's way of forming the DAG, the graph, the dependency graph. So you're saying this source here at compile time, that will actually become the full table name. So we get data from there, goes into our staging area, and then we say, okay, we want to make a few transformations to get the data prepared for our raw vault. So we want derived columns are essentially aliases. So we just say nation key, we want to be an alias of supplier nation key, region key, we want to be an alias of supplier region key. And then we've got record source. And there's a little bit of syntactic sugar in DBT Vault where if you put an exclamation mark in front, this will just become a constant value. So every single value in the column record source will be tpch-inventory. And then we've got hash columns. So the way hashing works, you just say, okay, I want a hash column called supplier PK, and I want it to be a hash of the supplier key column. And then you can do multi-column hashes where you just provide a list instead. And you can also do hash diffs where you just say, is hash diff is true, and you provide a list of the columns. Is hash diff true? That just makes DBT Vault automatically sort this alphabetically so that we've got reliable and consistent hash diffs. And that's pretty much everything. So that's hashes. And we've got standard hashing algorithms, and you can configure the null token, you can configure the join token, and all that's configurable. So you can pretty much customize it to your needs, and then you just supply which columns you want in your staging area. So without further ado, I will run that. So in Snowflake, I'll just show you. This is my sandbox, so it's just creating a few of these now. I'll just keep refreshing and it'll keep adding more and more as it runs. It's done 10 at the moment. So this is running currently on extra small against the TPCH size 10 at the moment. Keep doing some refreshes and we'll get the data in. There you go. So let's have a look at hub customer. So hub customer is the hub that I showed in the presentation. It's the first hub I showed you in the code earlier. So we've got our hash on the left, we've got our natural key, customer key, load date, and our record source there. So it's just made that one. got a link, again, standard link. We've got our two foreign keys, customer PK, customer nation key, and we've got our link hash key as well. And then satellites.
If you're sharing something, we can only see your IDE.
Oh, okay, apologies, thank you. I think I accidentally shared the window instead. Thanks for bringing that up. I will share that again. Screen. There you go, thanks for that. Right, sorry about that. So I'll go back to the beginning. So hubs, got customer PK, customer key, load date record source. This, again, like I said, this is the hub I showed you earlier. Links with the foreign keys out to the hubs. And then we've got satellites. So these are all of our hash diff and our hash key, and then our payload. So you've got customer name, this is the actual data, customer address, customer phone, all of this stuff. And again, of course, the load date and the record source. So we've got another column in here, which people may not recognize, which is effective from. It's actually an optional column in DBT Vault. It's just something we've added in because we found it useful in our clients, but it's completely optional and you don't have to have it in there. So don't worry about that if that's confusing. So that's pretty much, I think that's definitely finished now. Yep, so it took 43 seconds and it's loaded everything in. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so, and then we've got our stage. So this is vStage orders, which is what we're loading most of our Vault from. And this is essentially just a very wide table of all of the columns from our raw data and with all the additional hashes and constants that we've added on the end. And the reason for this is because it allows us to load everything in parallel. So rather than everything having dependencies on each other and having to load certain tables before others, which slows everything down, we just have one wide staging area. And then the hubs, links, and satellites and all your raw Vault loads from those. And it means we can just run them all independently. And because, of course, because Snowflake doesn't enforce any of the primary keys or anything like that, doesn't have any constraints, we can get away with that, and it really supports the very fast parallel loading. And DBT, you can configure the number of threads and number of queries that run at the same time. And of course, Snowflake has a very high parallelism count, so DBT and Snowflake work really well together in that regard. Of course, then because we've engineered DBT Vault to not worry about dependencies, can load everything in parallel. They all work very well together in parallel. Like I said, perfect marriage. Right, I think that's it for the demo. So I will stop sharing there and go back to the PowerPoint. Does anyone have any anything they would like me to show them before I move on in terms of the demo?
Alex, can you go back to the hubs?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and
yeah. Can you still see that?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So okay, so the customer. So Alex, one question I had was when you're preparing the staging with all your link hash keys. Let's say the hash key column, the link hash key column is actually referencing another table. How would that work out? Maybe you have a what do you call just the ID, and then you want to bring up a name for that from a different table, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's something we deal with in the stage. So the idea is we get everything prepared the way we want it to be loaded in the stage. So the stage, that's why we've got a kind of a wide stage here. We've got all the columns we could possibly need for loading the raw Vault, separated by source. So we don't just have one massive table. We do have, for raw inventory, we have a raw inventory stage, and for raw orders, we have a raw order stage. So in terms of if there's any joins you need to make to bring in columns from other sources, you do that in the stage.
So we do that prior to the stage, and then okay.
Yeah, and then you would just configure DBT Vault hashes to use those columns like this. So you just say I want, you'd want your hash to be this list of columns, and those lists of columns would be in your raw model that you're pointing to.
Got it. And how does DBT handle the loading of the effectivity satellite? Because that has to have some logic, right?
Yeah, I mean, so DBT Vault deals with all of that for you. We expect DBT Vault itself expects delta loads as per standard of Datavault, and we handle all of that in our own in the logic for you. So again, you just provide the metadata, and it handles all of the end dating and effectivity of things.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
There's no problem. Yeah. So there's an auto for effectivity satellites in particular. There's a flag you can provide that says, "Please auto end date for me." You can turn that off if you want to put in your own auto end dating logic if you have specific use cases.
Hey, do you have any examples of a transactional link and how?
Yeah, we only have one in this particular demo, and but yes, we do. So this is the metadata. It's basically like a hybrid of a link and a satellite, right? So the metadata looks like a link and a satellite, and then we have the actual T-link in here. So yeah.
So there are a few questions in the chat that I think Neil, I believe, answered them all. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
I don't know if any of your questions didn't get answered, if you're okay, please just unmute yourself and ask.
I tried my best. I may have missed one or two, but I think I've got all of them.
Hey, Alex, Priyank here.
Hi.
Couple of questions. So one, can you show us the macros on your IDE, the DBT Vault macros? And second question is, if I want to extend any of these macros, how do I do it?
Yeah, okay, so we actually have in our docs, so these are our docs, we have an extending section. So DBT itself actually has some really good functionality for extending and overriding, and basically we just use that. So there's nothing special to DBT Vault, it's just how DBT works. So essentially, there's a little bit of YAML config, and then you just provide your own implementation, and it will override the DBT Vault implementation. So it's very straightforward. There's a docs page on it, and yeah, all the appropriate links out to other things as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll show you the stuff. So we have so for example, this is the hub macro. That's our hubs and links are kind of some of the simplest, of course. So this one isn't very complex. But we have a bunch of stuff in there, and then you get onto something like multi-active satellites, which are a lot more complex, and you got all of this. So again, you don't want to do it manually, but of course you can go in and modify it as needed and override things. But we've got, I think it's about 4,000 tests behind this now, checking edge cases, different loading mechanisms, obviously checking that duplicates aren't loaded, all kinds of things. So if you do change them, usually it'll be for a very specific case. Essentially, they're very versatile and you shouldn't need to, but the option's there.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Okay. If that's everything, I'll continue on.
Hi, Alex. One last question.
Hi, yep. No worries.
This is Deepak. Is there any pre-built test cases that comes with the DBT Vault that comes with the package?
Not yet. However, there is something we are planning to add. It's in the roadmap. So there's a lot of clients that we've worked with, and there's kind of a standard suite of tests that we kind of deploy now with our clients, and we want to bring those into DBT Vault itself, and releasing it to the masses. So yeah, not yet, but we want to add it. We're really keen to add it because it's really important.
Thanks.
No worries. Okay, so it's essentially moving on. This is kind of a case study. So we've got a large client in the US at the moment that are using DBT Vault on Snowflake and with Datavault, of course, and they are feeding 3 billion plus rows. We've had a number of other clients with even larger data sets. So we've got, for example, 8 billion, a lot of records. And one of the kind of special things that we've seen on this is that they are running it across multiple teams. So they've got kind of a core team, and they've got surrounding teams that kind of contribute to the same model, and they're distributing and working in parallel. And it's really cool. And they're using DBT Vault to its limits, and really pushing it. But it's proved that at scale and the performance and the way it works, the workflow, it really works well. We're really proud, really happy to see it. And this isn't the only the client that we've done this with as well. And we're also developing and testing business rules with them. So we've got business Vault and business rules working as well. And yeah, so we've seen a lot of good outcomes from this, and some of the features so they've been asking for some features on the way that they needed, and we've brought them back into the DBT Vault public version. We've done that with a lot of our work. So if we find something and learn something in the wild, then we try and bring it back into the public version wherever possible. Is there anything you wanted to add here, Neil, on this particular slide?
No, not really. I think it states it quite well.
Yeah, cool, thanks. All right. So we want to start supporting more Snowflake functionality, and there are ways in DBT to do this, but they're not necessarily Datavault specific. So we want to bring our understanding and knowledge of Datavault in to DBT Vault tool, of course, and start developing helper macros, maybe a few models, of course, tests, like I mentioned, for things like pipes, streams, and external tables to help with the kind of the loading end and everything prior to your staging and raw Vault, and also help with the business Vault and presentation end as well. So this slide really was kind of we really want to do this. We've got customers doing this at the moment. It's not yet in the public version, but we're excited to start introducing more and more Snowflake specific features and really making the most of what Snowflake has to offer to really power DBT Vault and Datavault to its fullest potential. So if anyone on this slide just happens to have any ideas at the moment, then feel free to speak up now. If not, I will move on.
There was a question around how do you handle stream tasks for bridge in DBT? So maybe a little bit more focused. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way we're planning on implementing it and the way we have started implementing it in some of our clients is essentially through the use of macros, and you can run macros as something called an operation in DBT. Essentially allows you to just run that bit of SQL as a one-off operation. I guess that's why it's called an operation. So we can, and again, because it's a macro, you've got parameters input and you've got the output, which in this case, which would be pipes or streams. So we're essentially planning to have a bunch of helper macros do that kind of thing. I haven't specifically done it for bridges yet, so that'll be something we would like to explore. Yeah.
Just a quick question from my side, Alex.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was the one about bridge and stream. I was asking just because since in the bridge you have, you have multiple data source and one target. No, you have multiple hub and link and just one target in this case in the bridge. So it's a little bit, at least I experience a little bit more complex because you have to handle all of these, and either you create multiple streams or you use the change functionality in Snowflake to handle that. So for this reason I ask.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I mean, the way bridges work at the moment, and this we're always working to improve this. So the metadata, you know, hopefully over time we'll reduce it and make it easier to use. But because of the nature of bridges, they are a bit more complex than everything else. So at the moment, the metadata looks like this. You essentially provide the tables you want to grab data from and their appropriate primary keys and kind of their metadata for those tables, and it will automatically go through and kind of it'll do the bridge walk, and it will choose the date. It will work out all the dates and everything, and the points in time it needs to collect the data from those tables for using the as of date stuff. So it will work kind of naturally in its current state with how DBT works, but yeah, I'm sure there's probably some improvements we can make with pipes and streams. Yeah.
We're also starting to play with Papini bridges, so that's an interesting area as well.
Mm-hmm. So the business vault is at the moment one of the areas that we don't have as much support for, but it will be our kind of our next frontier, as it were. That's after we've added some of the more Snowflake specific things, and probably alongside actually we're going to start moving into that area and start developing more functionality to help people with their business vaults and presentation layers.
Alex, one enhancement that would be beneficial is in the staging layer, or in the stage, or from when we extract the data from the source, if we can extract only the inserts and updates based on a high watermark column, that would benefit.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So water levels and the loading process is something that kind of behind the scenes we're looking at quite. We want to start looking at, because we're getting a lot of questions on our Slack about it, and various there's a lot of different ways you can load data. So we want to provide first guidance on how to do it. So documentation in our website about best practices and how we would go about doing it. But we also want to provide some helper macros and models in order to help people load their data in a more structured and standardized way. So yeah, not yet, but we know it's something that the community wants, and we are planning to work on it.
Thanks.
Worries.
There is a great question, which I'm personally interested in as well. And I just lost it. Any plans to handle some more functionalities for security, for example, like handling in the metadata some governance stuff and creating programmatically in Snowflake some masking policies?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so DBT itself already does that. So hang on. This is something that might not necessarily be specific to DBT Vault. Sorry, that was the wrong thing. I'll find it later, but there's a whole section in the DBT docs on essentially you can specify metadata and say this column is PII. There's something called a post hook or a pre-hook in DBT where you can perform or execute a little bit of SQL before or after an operation. So after a model is loaded, before or after the entire DBT run, that will allow you to apply grants and all kinds of things. Basically, any SQL you can write, you can run that before or after something. And that's generally the proposed way of doing that kind of thing. So DBT already supports that, and you might want to write some macros around it, but I don't see any reason why at some point in the future we could provide, why we wouldn't be able to provide some macros to help people with that. Yeah.
Elsa, if you're around, there's a question around, will the recording be available later?
Yeah, absolutely. We're recording the meeting, and we will circulate it, particularly for those who cannot join us live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, there are a few more questions. Do you have more slides? I just want to make sure you finish.
I'm going to do a few more slides, and then I'll open up the floor to all the questions.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
I just thought off the back of the demo, there might be some questions that are relevant now. So that's why I opened up there. Yeah. Okay. So just a few things that we'd like to talk about. So DBT Vault, obviously being an open source project, there may be, and as good as our documentation is, there may be questions you have and problems that you encounter that you need quick responses on, that you need help with, and you need expert advice reliably. Not to say that we aren't reliable, but that you need now, basically. So we do provide DBT Vault support, and we do have a number of packages that we're working on, and they are going to be going live on the DBT Vault website in the near future. So that's something we do offer. And we also provide a number of services. So we, Datavault, as in our consultancy, we offer a number of services, including training and coaching on Datavault, so that you don't make mistakes, and that you start the project off properly, and you get things working and delivered on time and in the way that you need to deliver them. We can also run proof of concept. So with your data at your company, your organization, that's relevant to you. And we can also provide people from our team to help you on your existing Datavault projects. I went back a slide. And that's pretty much everything. So we do have, went up live very recently, a DBT Vault website. And that's something we're going to be adding to over the next few months. So we're going to start having blogs on there, all kinds of things. Really excited about that. It looks very good. We're very happy with it. And of course, we have a Slack channel, which some of you may be from. I think I recognize a few names. And of course, DBT themselves have their website. They also have free DBT training at learn.getdbt.com. Highly recommend doing that. It's very high quality and really, really useful resource. One of the really cool things that I'm participating with that we've set up is the Datavault forum. So it's essentially a Q&A forum. You can go on there, you can ask questions. So some of the questions that you've asked today, for example, could be asked on there. And we've got a number of industry leading experts. So we've got Patrick Tuber on there, for example, and there's really good high quality advice and really interesting discussion happening on there. So highly recommend you check that out. One of our most popular websites on our website, on our Datavault website, is What is Datavault? And we have a kind of a good 30 seconds overview of what Datavault is on there. So I think that's everything. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Any more questions?
Hey, Alex, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Thank you for your talk. It was very informative. But I was kind of curious what type of current tests or methods you have to ensure duplication doesn't occur in satellite tables specifically. And like I noticed there's a lack of a constraint on the satellite DDL builds. And I was kind of curious what the thought process was behind that.
So I mean, Snowflake itself doesn't enforce unique, well, it doesn't enforce constraints for a number of reasons. So, and we haven't added any additional logic in DBT Vault to deal with that. But we have quite a lot of deduplication logic. So we have window functions in the satellite, and we essentially, that's what the hash diff is for in the satellite. So, and we use the combination of the primary key and the hash diff to make sure that duplicate records don't get in. That's a standard part of how Datavault works as well.
Thanks.
No worries.
So there's a question around business key collision code. How do you do it in DBT Vault?
Right, so there's actually not direct support for this at the moment. One of our engineers, though, is working on it. So that's something that might be out for not this next release, but for potentially the release after it. Essentially, it's just going to work that there's an extra parameter, an extra optional parameter in the hub. So the macro, there'll be another bit of metadata you can provide, which will be the collision key. So it'll be quite straightforward to use. Bit of a sneak
there-
peek for you there.
Thank you.
Nice.
So there is a question around JSON. Shashanka, would you be comfortable to ask it yourself? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Sure. So I'm still new to DBT, but the metadata that you showed earlier kind of seemed like it's one-to-one with the common or simpler JSON structure, semi-structured format. A lot of our
it's YAML, but yes,
correct. So sorry, but a lot of
No worries.
our sources have complex structures where it's not one-on-one, and the JSON or Parquet structures are not defined to, to the prettiest forms, right? So they have a bunch of nested areas where the nested areas with code value key pairs where the actual value of the code is what we're looking for, but the named key value pair is not one-on-one, right? So the example that I shared earlier, the diagnosis code, you would want that to be a named value pair with the value being ABC or XYZ for the named diagnosis code, but that's not always the case with most of our source system. So how deep in the nested area could we define those metadata and have those values in the named key called code, switch that into a column, primary key, or a business key?
Okay, yeah. So you're talking about, so are you ingesting your data as JSON? So
Yes.
you've got it in like a blob store somewhere and you're bringing it in. Yeah. So we've actually had this quite a lot in our clients. And again, the simple answer is you deal with it in stage. So I actually wrote quite a powerful macro that in one client where you can just point this macro at a lump of JSON, it'll automatically take that JSON and kind of flatten it out into a table for you. And that's essentially just Snowflake SQL. So Snowflake have some really cool features with like variant columns where you can take JSON and flatten it out into a table. And that macro literally just did that with some parameters. Probably be something we eventually bring into DBT Vault because it's incredibly useful. So yeah, what I'd say is look at the Snowflake functions that allow you to flatten JSON and create your staging tables and essentially land your data from your JSON using Snowflake, and then DBT Vault can take over and start processing it into your raw vault.
Got it. So first flattened out based on your requirements. Once it's flattened, then use DBT. Got it. Yeah. Okay, makes sense. But we as of now we couldn't do it directly, could we?
Well, you could do it. You could build it yourself in DBT and Snowflake, yeah, but not with DBT Vault specifically. But that's the beauty of being on DBT, is because you can just do that in DBT. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll ask these questions and I'll probably answer it partially too. Currently, DBT Vault only supports Snowflake. Is there any particular reason why that's the case, even though DBT supports multiple warehouses? Well, first of all, Snowflake is the only data platform that you want to use, right? No, I'm just kidding. But I'll let you, Alex, answer that one.
Yeah, that is mostly the correct answer now. So funny you should ask, actually, because this week we were releasing our first release of support for BigQuery and Microsoft SQL Server. I just didn't mention it because it's not really relevant here, but we will be doing that. So the main reason that we only support Snowflake at the moment is because it's the platform that made most sense to us. It's the platform that most of our clients are using, and it's Snowflake, right? So that's why it's only Snowflake right now. But yeah, we are going to be adding support for BigQuery and SQL Server. We've got an external team currently working on things like Databricks. There's one contributor in our Slack who's working on Postgres. So we are going to be adding more support for things. It's not a lack of wanting to, it's just we prioritize Snowflake first, that's all.
And I know everybody on this call appreciates that. If somebody has to leave in a few minutes, I just wanted to, always really appreciate your feedback. And if you have any other ideas or subjects that you would like to cover, or if you want to be one of the future speakers, please reach out to me or to Elsa. We're always happy to bring, great speakers presentations to you. Alex will hang on with us for a little bit longer, so let's see if we can kind of cover all of the other questions.
No worries.
All right, let's see. Any plans to add more options to the metadata in models? You have ones for hash diff, PK, etc., but I would like to see additions that impact the where clause, like equals, greater than, in, not in, etc., almost like a SQL injection option.
Yeah, so we could do that option. However, there's kind of a way you can do this already, and it's something that we do. Because the times you're going to want to do this are, I would say, more. You're not going to need to do this very frequently. So the way we do it is we just wrap the. I mean, I can show you quickly actually. We just wrap the call to the macro in a CTE. So we say. So for example, for a hub, we just say, for example, with hub, and then you can just say select star from hub, and you can add your additional columns after the star, and just you can add whatever columns you want to it. So that's the way we do it at the moment, and we haven't put in kind of first class support for it because it's not a very common use case. We are adding things, for example, like collision key, because that is something that is very useful to have, is very common use case, and is something that's part of the Datavault standard. But if you're for some reason wanting to add any additional columns on a case-by-case basis, this is the way I do it. And it's the way we do it in clients when it's necessary.
Alex.
Yeah, hi.
I don't know if you are aware of Oracle DML logging. So it's like an option when you do an insert in a table, a million records. If a record fails, everything fails. So they created on the insert statement, you can add a log, a second table, so you get the good records going to the destination of the insert, and the bad records go to the same similar table but with extra columns for the exception codes. So this is an amazing feature in Oracle that Snowflake doesn't have. So I think that you are using basically insert or multi-table inserts here or merge. So there is nothing about this kind of preventing these kind of errors, I guess. Or maybe just the model is kind of trying to catch if a field is too big for some table or whatever. But you know, I never trust on data. It's always possible to have bad data coming with extra size that will break something in the middle. And until Snowflake have this very important, insert where good record, it only contains in a copy. So as you know, if you do a copy from files, a copy is like insert select, but good records go to the table, and the bad records, you can get access to the detail of the error. So I wonder how you are loading data with DBT Vault. It's just an insert or multi-table insert?
No, so we use there's a materialization that comes standard with DBT called incremental, and basically what that does is you can define some. It works like a normal table, but you define some conditional logic where if the table already exists, then only select these records to go in. And that's essentially what we do in the hub. So we only insert what we need to insert. It's all insert only. So behind the scenes, DBT creates an insert statement rather than a merge or anything else. And we just insert straight in. All the deduplication happens as per Datavault standards. So in terms of like bad data or duplicate data, the duplicate data should be deduped with the hub logic. For bad data, generally Datavault says load it all, but there are things like where you can have error marks, and there's also some structures like a record tracking satellite where you can log feeds and whether there have been errors or not. So it's the answer is kind of DBT supports that, but also Datavault has a few recommended approaches for that as well.
I was more asking about an exception on the insert. So you have a final table with 10
Oh, you mean like an actual like hard error? Yeah.
Yeah, because this is what wake up people at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
It's the exceptions of the low level stuff. And like I said, the insert select in Oracle with the MEL logging, it never fails, and it's super massive fast. But Snowflake, I put some months ago, I don't got any feedback when they are preparing that, because if you have loading 1 million or 10 million whatever records, if you have just one bad guy, everything fails, I guess. So I was just wondering about that.
Well, the Datavault itself is designed to be idempotent. So in theory, you could just rerun it and it would only load what you hadn't loaded before. So it's you get an error, okay, go fix that error, rerun it, and no harm done. It is probably how we would say to do it. But there are other structures you can use in Datavault to help track errors and find out exactly where you should start the load again from. There's multiple approaches to it. So it's not directly supported, but there are, wouldn't say workarounds exactly, but there are clean solutions to that kind of thing. Yeah.
So there's another question probably kind of along the same lines. How does DBT handle DDL changes, column removed, added, constraints modified, etc.?
Okay, so DBT itself, you can specify something called a full refresh, where it essentially just recreates the table. In terms of Datavault, when you add a column, generally what the Datavault approach says, create a new table, use that one with all the new columns and everything, and then eventually you can drop the old one. So it's a combination of using DBT with its features that allow you to recreate tables if needed, and using the standard approaches for Datavault. So it's all supported. It just depends on your approach. Yeah, thanks, Neil.
I'm saying DBT is bringing in some new functionality in that space soon as well.
Yeah.
And we'll be using that to build in some checks and automatic DDL in the background that will probably archive the old satellites and create new ones. But that's future functionality.
Yeah, we might have, yeah. So what Neil's saying is we might eventually be able to automatically go, oh, okay, there's been a change. We'll create a new copy of the table. And then it'll be up to you when you delete the old one, for example.
So just build in resiliency for schema changes that are like.
Yeah, follow the Datavault practices for that kind of thing. But DBT will support that. So yeah.
Awesome. Are there any Sorry.
Sorry, I had a question, Alex. So I first used DBT Vault package about 5 to 6 months ago, and back then the primary reason we actually backed off using DBT Vault package was because of the version incompatibility that I found between the DBT and the DBT Vault packages. I'm not sure if it's resolved or maybe we didn't come across the right documentation, about those version incompatibilities. Can you show us, are there any, somewhere on the website which says, hey, this DBT Vault package version works with these DBT versions?
That's a very good point. We don't actually have a table of, this version of DBT Vault works with X version of DBT. The main reason for that is because we're updating so often and DBT is updating so often that we are kind of, I guess we're assuming people will just move to the next version, but that's not always possible. So yeah, you're right. I think that could be helpful, but no, we don't have that currently.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. If it helps though, because DBT have just updated to version 1, it's in your best interest to update to version 1 as well, and that means the latest version of DBT Vault will be usable because that also supports version 1. So if you're behind on DBT or DBT Vault versions, now is a very good time to make the upgrade because obviously version 1 is a huge milestone and it benefits you greatly.
Okay.
So Alex, one question about deleted records. How does DBT handle that in the status satellite?
Right. Yeah. So we haven't released stage tracking satellites yet, but that essentially, assuming you have CDC on in your source system, we can load the creates and the updates kind of through the standard processes, but the deletes is something that we don't load, of course. So your status tracking satellite will handle that, and that's something that we're working on developing. I haven't been. It's not something that I can talk about yet because it's not fully completed, basically. But we are working on it, and it's something we want to have in. Yeah.
Got it.
Here's the quick questions. Are there any optimizations we can consider on hub satellites and links, table for particular columns, like clustering them on Snowflake?
Yeah, so I mean, generally we would, it's not something we have guidance for actually at the moment, but it's something, yeah, we generally advise just clustering by the primary key on most of the standard tables. Yeah, it's how whatever works for you in your business really, but primary key is kind of the standard.
And we also sometimes order data in stage.
Order as well.
Yeah, so that it gets inserted into Snowflake tables, just to create the right micropartitions. Yeah. A lot of thank yous for
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of thank yous for the amazing session.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to present and glad everyone enjoyed it.
All right, I believe, I apologize if I missed anybody's questions. Anybody else has any questions for Alex?
If there are any more burning questions anyone has, I am on the Snowflake Slack. I'm on our own DBT Vault Slack. We have the forum, the Datavault forum now as well. Multiple places you can contact me, and I'm happy to answer those.
And Alex always responds, so
yeah.
Highly encourage all the ways that were suggested, all the forums and Slack channels.
I'm also on the DBT Slack as well, so
yes.
Yeah, basically you can find me.
Yes, and Elsa just shared your email as well, so yeah. I'm sure if you send him a letter, he'll write an answer as well.
You can fax
right?
me if you really want.
I'm going to take you up on that, Alex. I have to go check down a fax machine, but
that'd be interesting, actually.
Fun surprise. All right. Well, thanks for an awesome session, Veronica. Well done again, and Alex, fantastic prezzo. Thanks for the whole whole Datavault team for sticking around and powering through chat. I know there is a lot of engagement today. Clearly, really fantastic content, and looking forward to seeing you all at the next meeting in May.
Look forward to it.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.